Hey guys, um, so more information. Moving on, we're going to be talking about video and audio, and then we're also going to be introducing one of my favorite things about, this is just an exciting moment, introducing CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And so this should all look pretty familiar. You've been doing this, been talking about structure and text and lists, nested lists, creating some simple links, creating in-page links, rendering images on the page, aligning images, and also the align function also works for text. I've seen that a lot of students have discovered that, which is really exciting. You can use the HTML5 version of embedding an image as seen here with the Fig caption business, creating a table, the forms business, which we just wrapped up. You were probably really excited about, but slightly disappointed because of the lack of PHP. I understand. And now we're just kind of moving on to a few additional tricks that we can have up our sleeves to help us down the road. And so let's go to our trusty book and take a look over here and see what's going on. I'm going to back up just a little bit. So we are on chapter 9. This is an older book, and something is caught here about it being an older book, which I'll discuss here, and that's Flash. Flash was a much bigger deal, in all honesty, at least a decade ago. Flash enabled the internet to start doing animation and fancy things, and Flash is actually a programming language. It has since been deprecated because now we have more advanced HTML that can handle these things, i.e. video and audio. And so we're really actually going to be ignoring all this stuff about Flash because no one is using Flash anymore. In fact, at some point there's a rumor that Steve Jobs, before he passed away, he did not like Flash because the programming language was clunky. It required a lot of, I think, memory or processing power. Essentially, he didn't agree with it or approve of it. And so there came a point where I believe that Steve Jobs would not even allow Flash to run on a Mac. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. Please do a Google search. And if you do find a really good article on that, please email it to me because I'd love to read it. So yeah, that's sort of the story behind Flash, is that Steve Jobs kind of killed it purposefully because it was clunky. And then HTML kind of caught up and started allowing folks to do more advanced things. We're not necessarily doing advanced coding in this class. We're doing very simple coding, as you've noticed, but it's still a lot of fun. And so it is really important to be able to embed video and audio onto a web page. And in order to do that, you do have to have the path set up. So in other words, you need source files. And I've actually included a couple source files in my notes HTML file for you. The first is this .mp3. It's a Beatles song called Help. You may recognize it. And then I also just kind of had this .mp4 file around. It's actually kind of an interesting story. I think it was 2006. I was actually getting ready to go to graduate school in San Francisco, and I wanted to complete one last drawing before I went to San Francisco. And I was living in Albuquerque here at the time. And I went to school over here at the UNM art department at the University of New Mexico. I went in there one evening at I guess maybe 6 or 7 p.m. And I stayed the entire night drawing 1,000 lines. So I really was interested in documenting process and following process to see where it would take me. So it was really just simply an experiment, but it was also just really an exercise in discipline. And so for each line that I would put down, I would actually, I had a camera set up, and I had a remote in my hand while I was making the mark on the page. And so again, it worked out to about 1,000 lines, believe it or not. I kind of guesstimated it by trying to figure out how many lines on average I was doing per inch or 2 inches or something like that along the sheet of paper. And it worked out to about 1,000, give or take. So the title of the drawing that I'm working on in that video is 1,000 lines, 1,000 photographs. And like I said, I basically did that drawing from about 6 p.m. And I remember leaving the UNM art department studio building around 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. I just remember the sun coming up, and I was quite tired. And that was in 2006. So yeah, that was almost 20 years ago now. So anyway, that was a small .mp4 file. It's only 14.4 megabytes, as you can see over here. And I think it is useful to kind of keep that in mind. I mean, this Beatles song is also only 3.4 megabytes. Remember, whatever this is, I mean, I have no problem bringing this up on my desktop because the server is local. It's on the desktop, or it's on a hard drive. But imagine a phone or a device having to download these heavy MP3 files. That's, again, just being aware of file sizes and how folks are going to be able to download them onto their device. It's not an issue here because things are local. So none of these files are in the cloud. They're actually on my computer. And so the browser can access them really, really easily. But which it's why, like, things are now hosted on YouTube. We'll get to that. We already talked about iframes a little bit and how useful they are. But this is a much more kind of direct way of hosting files if you decide to do that. But these days there are so many hosting services to hold music and video. And so although there are probably more contemporary solutions to these audio and video problems, I still think it's fun that you guys just kind of see it in action. Okay. And so again, a lot of the book here is talking about Flash, and we're just going to sort of cruise through that because it has been deprecated. It's not a thing anymore. No one is using Flash anymore. An interesting story, though, I did have a friend who was working in San Francisco for quite a few years and had a lucrative career just basically because he knew that particular programming language. And so I think that's an important note. Flash did eventually die, but there were years and years and years where my friend probably had a 6-figure salary because of that particular programming language that he knew. And so he was able to solve problems for whatever marketing firm that he was working for. That's done and gone, and he had to evolve. He had to change because he basically wasn't marketable with Flash anymore. That's just the way that things work. But it is so wonderful to still have HTML and CSS still, like, a foundational driving force of web development. And so here is the HTML5 code for adding video. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here to brackets and just point it out to you guys. Okay. And so here is chapter 9, HTML5 video. And here is the video source. Okay. Code that is identical to essentially what's going on in the book over here. The primary difference that is happening, you'll notice that they had an image, I guess, a video called puppy.mp4. Well, I didn't have that, which is why I changed the code over here, and I'm calling it process. .mp4. And if I go over to my Finder window, you'll see the path. It's in an images folder. There's the images folder. Within that images folder is process.mp4. And here it is, process.mp4. Okay. I didn't change the JPEG because I just didn't have a JPEG available. But if you guys want to do that or try it, I welcome you to do so. Okay. And so this is something that you can kind of do on your own. All right. You can also modify the dimensions dependent on the aspect ratio of your video. I kept the aspect ratio the same. I guess I could probably get the details of this video and really do the math and figure it out. But I don't think that's necessary in this quick tutorial circumstance. You can kind of see also I didn't change the text. And so I'm going to change that right now. This is a video of 1,000 lines and 1,000 photographs animated. Yeah, and by the way, I used an Adobe software application to composite all of the photographs. So I downloaded all of them and composited them, and then I animated them and tightened it down so that the video is only like maybe 2 or 3 minutes long. Obviously, I wouldn't make you guys watch a 12-hour video. Okay, so let me save that. And next thing I want to do is I want to test the waters. Let's see if this is working. So let's go over here to my browser. Let's hit refresh. And you can kind of see there's no image that's taking because, again, I don't have this image in my images folder. So nothing is going to happen there. I welcome you guys to try to change or modify that, and you can show me in your uploaded files. I'm not going to do that in this circumstance, as stated earlier. But let's test it. So I'm going to hit play here. Boom. And there it is. It's working. You can kind of see I'm moving my sketchbook around. I look quite a bit younger there. Wearing my usual black t-shirt and some jeans. And so I don't know if you guys can see, but these lines are starting to develop on the left-hand side. And then I can actually even kind of cruise through. And you can see how things are really kind of developing. 1,000 lines, 1,000 photographs, and it took about 12 hours. Okay. So that's embedding a video with HTML5. I could do something similar, and I could upload this video to YouTube, and then I could use an iframe to plug it into my website as well. The real truth is, I believe that's advisable. That's a better way to do it these days. But this is just good information to have moving forward. Here's the HTML5 video. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to our book. And again, there's the Flash MP3 player. We're not so worried about that. But we do like the HTML5 audio player, which is right down here. This is the code, more or less, that I have added to the notes file over here. There it is. H3, HTML audio. Here's the audio opening with the attribute and the path. Here is the audio closing. Okay, very, very simple. I did not change this text, so I'm going to change it right now. This is a great Beatles song. Saved. Okay, and here again, the path is that this MP3 has been placed in the images folder. So if I go to my Finder window, I can see there it is. Help HELP.mp3. HELP.mp3. If any of this text is slightly wrong, or if you forget to put this S here, it's not going to work. HTML needs to be exact. So you really need to be very OCD about your coding techniques. Okay, so that's saved. Next thing I want to do is test the water. So I'm going to do the same thing. And look, it's even only, Beatles songs were pretty short, 2.5 minutes. There it goes. Not just anybody, I need somebody. And this is all just pre-packaged HTML, the aesthetic and how it looks and everything. It's really quite nice, real nice, kind of minimal. That's what I like about HTML and CSS. It's very direct. Those are the two main things I want you to get out of chapter 9. And as a reminder, Flash, you don't need to worry about that, okay? It's just, it's not necessary. So moving on, this is actually a huge deal. Introducing CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Earlier, I mentioned to you guys that HTML is like the structure of a house. It is the timber or the lumber that holds up the walls or holds up the roof. It is the concrete foundation that everything is built upon. But once you start putting gypboard on the walls and painting those walls blue and putting a beautiful, kind of like red brick roof on your house, and then you think about the light that's going to come in, so you start thinking about glazing or glass that you're going to apply to your building. That's all CSS. CSS is basically the aesthetic part of web design, and that's what we're going to briefly just kind of touch upon. There's, of course, valuable information in here for you guys to read, but I am going to sort of give you the quick kind of version, all right? What you need to know, and you'll see it in the notes.html file that I'm giving you, but you're also going to see it in this index./CSS sample, which I'm going to give you. So I'm giving you guys a web environment with all of this set up, but I want to make sure that you guys understand, or that you know how and why it's working. And so if I click into this index/CSS/sample, you're going to see an index file. Okay. You're also going to see an images folder, which is currently empty in this version, but you can put stuff in there, right? And then you're also going to see a CSS folder. Inside that CSS folder is a different type of document. You can even see that the icon is a little bit different. The icon here is indicating Google Chrome, which is a browser. The icon here is simply indicating brackets, which is the code editor. Also notice that this one ends in .css, and of course you all know this already. An HTML file ends in .html. So this is a working environment that I am sending to you, okay? And I want to show you how it works, but I'm actually going to show you how it works with the other file system that I'm working with, which is notes-html. We click on this folder, you're going to see something similar. You're going to see an images folder, which we've been populating, and you're also going to see the CSS folder. If we open up this CSS folder, there it is. It says style.css. There's a little trick there. So if we go to brackets, guys, notice at the top, there's this link. And this, by the way, we're looking at the notes.html file right now, okay? And here is the link that makes everything possible. Basically, we want these two documents talking to each other. We need them to be able to communicate. If they are not communicating, nothing is going to happen. The only way that these guys are going to communicate is if you tell the browser with the HTML document exactly where to find this styles.css document. And so notice there's a CSS folder that has been specified. There's the CSS folder. Inside the CSS folder is a styles.css file. Well, notice how this one just says style. I have intentionally broken the communication temporarily just to show you guys why it's important to get things exact. And so if I go to my browser and I open this up, notice how there's no color here right now. I mean, there's the default color for the link, but that doesn't quite count, okay? But there is no fun color happening here. The reason there is no fun color happening is because again, this is the HTML file that we're working with. These are all the images and assets that are currently being used in this environment or this file, this index.html file. And up here is this new sort of contender, CSS. Inside that CSS folder is style.css. But up here it says styles, plural. I intentionally broke this file by simply removing the S. So I'm going to add it back. Now it says styles. Now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to hit Command R for refresh. And now there's all this color happening all of a sudden. The reason being is because I have just re-established the communication between the styles.css and the notes.html. Okay. Now we're going to go into the wormhole a little bit deeper. So just kind of brace yourself. I'm going to show you how this color is happening. The textbook is showing you as well. And by the way, I love this textbook. It's going to give you a lot of nitty-gritty information. It's going to talk about the selector, the declaration. It's going to show you how to do all this business. But I want to show you, I really believe firmly that it's so important in this class that you learn, you read the textbook, but then you learn by doing, okay? Right, what I was just showing you over here is external CSS, because all of the CSS is on a separate file, but somehow you're giving these commands telling the HTML to render text a certain color or the background a certain color or to use a particular font, etc., etc. So that's what external CSS is. It's not embedded in the HTML. By the way, you should really never use internal CSS. I'm actually not too happy that the book is showing you anything related to internal CSS, because I don't think it's not good practice. Okay, it's not the way. If you went into a marketing office or a design office and you started doing internal CSS, they might give you a little grief when you go out to lunch with your colleagues. So they might tease you a bit. So external CSS is the way to go, and that's how I've set up the document that I've given you. Okay. CSS selectors are very, very important. This is an example. I love this page because it maps out all of the CSS selectors. Okay. And I'm going to be talking about, you can try all of these if you want, but the big ones that I want to try and use for this class primarily is the type selector, the class selector, the ID selector, and the descendant selector. You can start experimenting with any of these, okay? That's your prerogative, but I am going to limit this particular video tutorial to those selectors. So if we go back to our notes, our HTML notes file, I've mapped it out for you as best I can. So you'll see there's an H2 and it says chapter 10, introducing CSS. Then it says type selector. This header 4 is going to be pink. I told it to be pink via CSS on the external style sheet. There's no command here telling this H4 to be pink. And yet, if I come over here and I open this file with brackets, I will see the command right here. And I've used comments to communicate with you guys. I've basically said all H4s on this document will be the color pink. Simple as that. And that is a type selector. So all H4 types will be the color pink. Let's test that theory. But look at this. There's that particular text or header. It's an H4. It looks like paragraph text, but believe it or not, that's actually a header 4. Okay, you can see there. Also, this is a user experience issue. If you're having trouble reading that pink against that blue, well, I mean, this is just a tutorial, but if this were a professional website, this would be the last thing I would want to do because it just simply doesn't make the text very legible. But this is indeed an H4, and I told that H4 to be pink over here on my style sheet, my external style sheet, and I did it right here, okay? Next thing we're going to take a look at is the class selector, okay? And so essentially I'm telling all paragraph text with the class selector, which is yellow. I've defined it as yellow. And by the way, you can use any word. I mean, you should keep it pretty simple. You could call it, I don't know, Dio, like Ronnie James Dio or Metallica. It doesn't matter, but it is important to use a word that makes sense. I chose yellow because I'm trying to make this paragraph text yellow. And so all I did was, here's the paragraph text, there's the P. Here's that little period actually indicates class. And then following that, yellow. But again, I could use any word I wanted as long as it corresponds with class equals yellow here. You see that? And I'm gonna show you guys just for fun. I'm gonna call this Dio for Ronnie James Dio. And I'm gonna save it. I just broke the communication as far as the class goes. So if I go over here and refresh, notice it's no longer yellow. Okay. But if I go over here to the style and I change this one to Dio as well, now it's going to start working again. Gotcha. So I'm going to change this back to yellow. And I'm going to change this back to yellow. Same thing. And also, these are just links to more information about using the class attribute. Okay. An ID is pretty darn similar. Okay. And so this particular ID, here it says ID equals cyan. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here, take a look at the code and how it corresponds. Look how it says P, but instead of the period, which indicates a class, there's actually a pound sign, which indicates ID. So P, pound for ID, and then cyan, and then that's why it's working. Come over here. There it is. And again, it's a little bit difficult to read. That's bad for user experience, but this is just a tutorial. And then here's that link that will go to more ID attribute info for your review. Okay. You have to try this stuff. You have to code it and actually try it. And when you see it happening, it's really amazing. I still kind of get excited, you know, when I see code working. I mean, it's just really amazing to me. It's exciting. The last one I wanted to show you, which is just kind of fun, and it also indicates, you know, again, when we were working with nested lists, we were thinking about that child-parent relationship. Well, this is a similar circumstance because the A tag is now a child of the P tag, and I'm saying all A tags that are a child of P tags should be this color, magenta. Simple as that. And then let's look at the code and how I did it. Here's the paragraph text, okay? And here is where the A tag starts and ends. It's a lot of code, but the only thing that's going to render is magenta here, right? And it's also going to render a certain color, and it's also going to link to this this URL that I provided. So let's try it. By the way, all of this text is red. Why? Because further up in the CSS, I told all of the text, all the p text or paragraph text to be red. Again, you know, like with the H1, I told all the H1s to be blue. Anyway, I just wanted to reinforce that and show you all the paragraph text is red for a reason, okay? But this one piece of text within the paragraph text, the link, is in fact magenta, and it has this clickable link that leads to this Wikipedia page talking about the magenta color, which is again, you know, one of my favorites. That's really what you need to know at this point. But I gotta say, this project 5, is as important, if not more important, than project 0. When I was asking you guys to do the Hello World business, if you can get over this additional hump, you're going to be fine in the remainder of this semester. Okay. You need to do this with confidence. You need to be able to make these changes and understand a descendant selector, an ID selector, a class selector, and a type selector. That is very, very important at this stage of the game. There's also another lesson that can be learned here. And look, I'm telling here at the top, this is a broad kind of targeting system that I'm using. I'm saying, look, I'm using the body tag right here. I'm targeting everything in the body, and I'm telling the background color to be this powder blue. Furthermore, I'm also telling the browser to choose a font, okay? And you'll notice that there are 2 fonts available, actually 3 really. And that CSS name comes from it's cascading style sheets. So in other words, if the first doesn't work, then the browser is going to try the second. And if the second doesn't work, it's going to use the third. And by the way, a lot of PCs don't have Helvetica. Like, you know, Adele, or I don't know. I'm not too crazy about PCs. I don't use them. You know, the real truth is that Macs and Apples are slightly more preferred by designers and artists. I think they have a better user experience too. You guys can argue with me regarding that via email, okay? But Arial and Helvetica are extraordinarily similar, okay? And so if you're on a Mac, it's always going to be able to find Helvetica. If you're on a PC, it's always going to be able to find both Arial and Helvetica. God forbid if it can't find either of them, then it's just going to find a sans serif, which essentially means, you'll learn this later in graphic design classes with me if you take them. It's a modern font without foot. That's what that translates to in French, without foot, essentially without the ornamentation. So very kind of modern and direct. Those fonts render really nicely on the screen, which is kind of why they're preferred by designers. Okay, but I could change this really quick. I could change this to another. I'm going to use Verdana. It's another one of my favorites. I'm going to save it. Watch this. Now I'm going to refresh it. So it did change slightly. I know it looks quite similar, but Verdana has a slightly different look. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to Arial as my number 1. Save, refresh. So that's really important too. But this is a broad net that I cast by targeting everything within the body. Okay, because look, the body starts here. As you know, we've done this before. It starts there with the opening, and it ends all the way down here with the closing. So basically, I'm telling everything, this whole area, have a background color of light blue, and I want all of the font to be a particular, all of the text to be a particular font. Okay. that's enough for now. And remember, this exercise is so important moving forward. You need to do it with confidence so that you're ready for the following projects. And things are going to move quickly. I've seen that folks are doing absolutely well in this class and really grasping the information. And most importantly, it feels like folks are really having a lot of fun and learning some real fantastic information. Bye-bye for now.